Hello everyone, this is Dragon Song 12 back again with another video. You can see today's art is from my comic Conscripted. We're doing 2 pages in this one rather than just one. And you might think, following the pattern, that I would then talk a lot about the comic Conscripted, what it is, what inspired it. But the truth is I really don't have a lot to say about it at this point. It's pretty much everything's on the page with that one, so I don't really have a lot to say. So instead, the topic for this one, if you saw the thumbnail, is going to be more broadly about my thoughts on media in general. I used the word gamification in the title. It's a little misleading. I'm kind of speaking about something more broad than that. It's just an easy way to condense down what I'm talking about. But yeah, we're going to talk about my thoughts on certain aspects of media discussion that I don't like. I'm going to be honest. And I do want to give a little disclaimer here right from the beginning. I don't actually genuinely believe that there is any wrong way to enjoy art. So, if anything I'm talking about in this video is something that you do enjoy, I want you to bear in mind right here and now that I think that's not only fine, I think that's great. And this video is not intended to change your mind. I'm not here to try to tell you that you're wrong. And you shouldn't be looking at it that way. This is more intended to just be a different perspective. Um, just in case, I get a little hyperbolic or I get a little annoyed at certain points. That is just me expressing frustration that sometimes it feels like this is the only way we can talk about art. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it in general. And really, what you should be looking at this as is, like I said, a different perspective. That way, I'm not unique or special. There's a ton of people like me in the world, and you can maybe, if you come across someone like that out there, you'll have a better understanding of where they're coming from. So that's really what this little video is going to be about. We're going to talk about some things that three different topics, basically, that I'm thinking of as gamification, and I'll kind of get to a conclusion at the end. This is all sort of an introduction to my thoughts on media. It sort of shapes a lot of what I'm going to be talking about going forward in probably more positive ways. So I kind of wanted to get this out of the way now with, kind of covering that wholesale. So there's no need to beat around the bush any further. Let's start getting into it, and we'll start with one that I think I'm a little more sympathetic to than the other topics I'm going to talk about in this, and that is the question of power scaling. If you're not sure what power scaling is, it's basically, to really distill it down to a very simple explanation, it's the question of who would win in a fight. Is A stronger than B? That sort of thing. And it's something I am more sympathetic to because it requires a lot of analysis of the media, but it's also a question I don't really care about. I don't really care who would beat who. My answer to that question has always been whoever the author wants to win the fight will win the fight. And I get that from a perspective of looking at that question, that feels like a very dismissive answer. It's not meant to be. To me, that's better. That makes it open. That gives the author the freedom to write about the fight however they want and not have to, be dictated by numbers on a graph. And I think that's kind of what gets me about it. I grew up both watching and playing sports my entire life. And from that I know that, you know, underdogs win a lot. Like, they win all the time. I think in general they're not going to win the majority of the time, but like, there's an upset in sports basically every single day. It happens so often that, like, we have phrases associating with it. If you ever hear someone use the phrase, that's why they play the game, that's what they're referring to. They're saying you can't just look at the statistics, you can't just look at the numbers on the page and decide who will win this match. You have to actually play the game and win it, because there's a million factors other than those stats on the page that define who's going to win that match. And I think that having that as a background really makes the question a little nebulous for me. Like, these numbers, these statistics, they don't really matter. Humans aren't machines. They don't perform exactly the same way every time. And there's so much that, affects how one performs that are outside of that, like from big things like your state of mind at the time of the match, or little things like what you had for breakfast that morning. There's no real way to quantify it, and I think worrying too much about numbers limits storytelling capability. So it's just not a question I'm that interested in. I do like the analysis aspect of it, and I do understand why people are so into it. Like, I get the appeal. Um, to me, unfortunately, it's also been tainted somewhat by people online who take it as basically their entire personality. How they use it as like objective truths, like bigger numbers means better. This character is best. This story is best. It has bigger numbers, and it's objective truth because they're bigger numbers, and that can't be altered. And like those people who will not listen to anything else, um, kind of turn me off of the whole thing altogether. So if you ever speak to me about it and I seem kind of dismissive, that's probably why. It wasn't something I was interested in to start with, and now we have, these people having this like militant attitude about it has sort of turned me off of it even more. Like, I have no interest in like fighting for it because it's not something I care about. So I just sort of decided, well, I don't need to have anything to do with that discussion, and I just sort of tune out. But I do understand the appeal. I think the analysis that people can do to arrive at their results is interesting. It's just at the base not a question I really care about. So I do sort of zone out from it. And that means that you're not really going to get that type of writing from my stories. Power levels, power scaling, how strong someone actually is, isn't really going to be a factor, even though I do write a lot about, action and, you know, genre fiction. I'm more interested in the character interactions, long and short of it. But my next topic, I'm a little more irritated about than the power scaling. So, what is the next topic? It's grading art. Judging it on a score from like A to F or 1 to 10 or whatever it is a person decides to do. I hate grading art. I hate it when people do it. I hate the focus on it. I think it's kind of arbitrary and doesn't really say much. Um, like, I get the idea behind it. I get the appeal. I get that, like, it's just a really quick and easy way to say, what you think about is like if you say a movie is a 7 out of 10. What you're basically trying to convey really quickly and easily without a lot of fluff is that you think it was good, not great. That makes sense. But, like, what does that 7 mean exactly? And does the meaning of that 7 change if you're talking about, say, video games instead of movies? The answer is yes, by the way. Yes, it does change, and you have no idea how infuriating that is to me. Um, I just really think that because art is kind of nebulous, it's very difficult to pin down. That I don't think the numbers really capture much, or grades really capture much. I think they've come across as being very arbitrary. And someone listening to this might say to themselves, well, I grade things, and I do not grade things arbitrarily. I mean everything I say. Let me give you a little hypothetical to explain kind of what I mean by this. Let's say we have a person named Bob. Bob is really looking forward to a new movie that's about to come out, right? So he's looking around and he sees a review of this movie he's excited about, and the reviewer gives the movie a 4 out of 10. So Bob sees that and he thinks to himself, oh, I guess the movie's not that good. Well, that's a shame. But if Bob actually took the time to read the review, he would notice that what the reviewer says is that they thought that the, special effects and choreography and the action were all really good, but that they felt that the story and characters were kind of flat and bland, and because of that, they weren't able to engage with it, and they didn't enjoy it very much, and so they gave it a 4. This reviewer is not lying. They are not making things up. They aren't twisting things. They're just listing their opinion. But in our hypothetical, Bob was looking forward to this movie specifically because he wanted to watch the action. He wanted the special effects. He wanted the choreography. So in that scenario, this is not a negative review for Bob. This is saying that the things that he wants are good. It doesn't really matter what the number at the end is, because like people can like different things. It's okay to be more interested in the special effects and in the spectacle than in the story and characters. That's not a problem. You can like art for a lot of different reasons, and that's perfectly good. So, as far as Bob is concerned, that review that gave it a 4 out of 10 is a positive review because it's saying the thing he wants to see is good. It's very, very easy to imagine uh, the flip side, where a reviewer looks at the same movie and says, well, the story and characters in this are kind of bland and flat, but the action and special effects were great, and this is a spectacle film, so obviously that's what you want. So I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. That's basically the same review as the 4 out of 10. It just has a different number tacked onto the end. Uh, and like neither of these reviewers is lying. Neither of them is like got some agenda against it. They just have different preferences and different focus on what they think a good movie is. This is why it is and always has been my personal credo to not look at the numbers and the grades. Just find yourself a couple of reviewers that you trust. And please note, I said trust, not agree with. I just pointed out you don't have to agree with the reviewer's conclusions for their review to matter to you. Find a couple of reviewers that you trust and read their reviews. If everybody is saying that a that some aspect of the, let's say it's a movie, that some aspect of the movie is great, then at the very least it's probably pretty good. If everybody is saying that some aspect of the movie is bad, then that's probably a weaker area. You don't have to agree with them 100%. You don't have to accept everything, but reading the reviews is worth it, because what matters to the reviewer, because they're an individual, may not matter to you because you are also an individual. You kind of get what I'm saying here. I feel like having too much of a reliance on grades, on numbers, on having things perfectly set up, kind of diminishes what art is all about. There's so many things that I've seen that are qualified as bad that have really, really good elements in them. Elements that I like seeing, that I'm happy I got to see, even if the rest of the experience wasn't great. You you can do that. You can enjoy part of something that's quote unquote bad. Like I've seen things that had, were otherwise pretty poor, but had like a fantastic soundtrack, or like one actor's really putting on a really entertaining performance, even though the material's not great. Or the effects. Maybe the effects are great. Or maybe I've even seen like beautiful, gorgeous painted backdrops. That's such a small thing, but you know, it's still really cool. It's still an aspect that someone put a lot of work into, and they look good. It's okay to appreciate them. There are good aspects in bad art, and it's okay to enjoy them. The numbers aren't going to capture that. They're never going to capture that. The 4 out of 10 doesn't tell you what's good about it. It just tells you that the reviewer thinks it's a 4 out of 10. And I just think that's really reductive. I think it doesn't capture what is so fun about art, especially really complex art like movies, TV, video games, things that have multiple disciplines of art mixed together, because these things combine, visual storytelling, written storytelling, acting, color, all this stuff, music, every aspect. And you're just going to distill all of that down to a single grade? I can't get behind that. I know everybody wants to grade things. I know it's like the most popular way to talk about art, and I just personally find it to be kind of a waste of time. Like, if you want to tell me what your number is, sure, I'm sure it means something to you, but I'm more interested in why you feel that way than having, just a flat number or a flat grade. Sorry, I didn't do letter grades in school, so to me, grades are numbers. But yeah, that's something that like you see a lot used a lot in the way that oral art is talked about, and I don't like it. I don't think it helps. I think it sort of distracts from the art. I think it's a mistake to focus too much on grading things. Now, to avoid getting too caught up in this one, to avoid ranting more than I already have, because, like I said at the beginning, I do understand why people like doing this, and I don't think you're wrong if you want to. Um, but let's move on. Let's move on to my third and final topic that I would like to discuss, which is ranking things. I actually used to really like ranking things, top 10 lists and whatnot. But over the years, I've really, really soured on it, and I've come sort of to the place where I am with grading things now, because it really is just a different method of grading things. So a lot of my complaints there come over to ranking things, and this is like not just top 10 lists, but like tier lists. I that's when that became a thing on the internet. I was just like, oh wow, I'm just gonna turn off the internet for a while. Um, Big part of my problem with this is that when people start talking about ranking things, it sort of just becomes the whole discussion. You stop talking about the art itself and you're just talking about your ranks, where you would put it. And I'm not really interested in that. Like, where you would put it doesn't matter to me. I want to know what you think about the art. Um, I really, really hate it when people try to rank things that are within a single work, like characters in a story or like soundtracks or anything really, anything that's part of the same piece of art. Because you're taking things that were created and designed specifically to work together, and you're putting them at odds with one another. And like, that's ridiculous. That's a terrible way to look at art. That's not what they were made for. They're designed to work together. That's the whole point. Um, but I don't really like it outside of that either. Like, let's take another hypothetical here. Let's say we wanted to rank all Disney movies, for example. They're not the same thing. They're all separate films. So that's outside of my initial complaint. But like, can you really rank them? Aside from being, having one company's logo slapped on them, do they really have any similarities? Can you really compare, like Fantasia to Treasure Planet to Frozen? These aren't even the same genre. Can you compare those three films? And you may want to narrow it down further and be like, all right, well, let's take things that have something in common. Let's talk about the princess movies. Disney has made that a brand, so they can be compared, right? Can they? Like, let's talk about two. Let's say Snow White versus Beauty and the Beast. Can these two movies really be compared? They were made half a century apart using different techniques by different crew for a different audience in a different context. Just because they have extremely surface level similarities, can they really be compared? I just don't really think so. Like personally, I have a favorite among them. But like, does that matter? And I get that people will want to be like, well, I'm not really looking at all that stuff. Like that's context stuff, and that's not really. I'm looking at objectively which one is the better film. And to that, I want to say, no, you're not. You're not objective. Just like the movie is a product of its time, so are you. You'll notice it's very funny to me. In fact, you'll notice how often many of these objective critics will cite movies that they say did it right, and almost always, like a good 95% of the time, it's stuff that they came to during their formative years. It's stuff that was important to them while they were growing up. Like you're not fooling anybody here. Like anybody who says they're an objective critic is a big red flag to me, because I'm like, either you're lying to me or you're lying to yourself, and either way, I can't trust what you're saying. You know, like, be honest about your biases. It's okay. Everybody has biases. It's fine. You are a product of the time you come from. There's nothing you can do about that. Like, going back to the question of Snow White or Beauty and the Beast, I prefer Beauty and the Beast. But like Beauty and the Beast was released when I was like 9 or 10 years old. Of course I like it better. It was literally made for me. Like, why wouldn't I? And like Snow White was made in the 1930s. There's not a lot of people around now who really understand the context and what the world was like when it was made. That, to me, is actually a far more interesting story, even though I prefer Beauty and the Beast, because that's something I don't know. I know the context of Beauty and the Beast. I was there. But knowing the context of Snow White, understanding like what Disney was doing at the time, why it was called Disney's Folly, why people wanted to do it even though they thought it was a folly, and how it became a success, that's all really interesting. Why wouldn't we want to talk about? Why would I want to put this movie low on a list when it's got such a fascinating story? And that's really the thing, is that I don't want to like focus on the ranking over talking about what these movies are like, because to me the context matters. Like, that matters a lot. I don't want to remove it. I don't want to talk about it quote unquote objectively. I want to talk about the context. It's really interesting why art is made, what's going on at the time the art is made, what influences people. All that stuff is really interesting, and you sort of lose it when you just start slotting them into numbers on a list based on personal preferences. And so as we come down here to the end and we start to form a conclusion, I think you can kind of see already what I'm getting at here and what it is specifically that I'm not a fan of. And the reason why I called it gamification. Because all of this is different ways in which to pick a winner. And that ultimately is what I have a problem with. I don't really have a problem with people who want to organize things via, power scaling or grading or ranking. All that stuff is fine in a vacuum, but people want to use them to pick a winner. We need to have a winner. We need to have losers. We need to know what is the best and what is the worst, and we need to quantify things. And that's what I do not like. I don't think art should be looked at that way. I don't think art should be considered in terms of winners and losers. I think you should just take each piece as itself. And if you like aspects of it, like it. You don't have to quantify it. You can just enjoy it. Or if you don't enjoy it, you can just do that. In a very simple way, like way back when Armageddon and Deep Impact came out so close together, and they're both asteroid disaster flicks, and everyone's like, oh, which one's better? Who cares? Does it matter? What if you like both of them? You can just like both of them. You can just not like both of them. You can like one more than the other. You don't have to pick a winner. You can just enjoy a film. I don't really like talking about what one's the best. I'd rather talk about the specifics of the art itself. I want to talk about the cinematography. I want to talk about the writing. I want to talk about the use of color, the use of music. I want to talk about characterization. I really like talking about characterization. I like looking at little details and seeing the effort that artists put into their work. I want to look at all aspects of it. I don't really care about where it falls on a list. And like I said at the beginning, my big frustration with this sort of thing is that it feels like this is the only way we're allowed to talk about art. You have to list a winner. You have to say where you put it in the list. And I don't want to. I don't care. If you do, I don't mind that. I'm probably not going to watch your video if you make one about ranking things. The number of times I've clicked on a video being like, oh, they're going to talk about this aspect of this thing. That's fun. Oh, they're ranking it? Never mind. But, nobody's watching my videos, so I can't really complain about people making videos that no one watches. You should absolutely just do you. Don't care about what I think. I don't matter. And I extend that to the art itself. Who cares what my favorite movie is? It doesn't matter. It's not important. These numbers don't matter. They don't mean anything. What matters is how the art makes you feel. And I know that that's a sort of wishy-washy thing, but there's so many aspects that go into it, and that's what's interesting. That's what's fun. And it all gets lost when we have to stop talking about the intricacies and have to talk about, well, what's your number, you know? I know I've ranted a bit here, but it sort of colors the way I like to talk about art, so I wanted to get this all off my chest. Um, and then I can reference back to this later on without having to rant about it all over again. Um, but thank you for listening if you made it all the way to the end, and I hope you have a wonderful day.